So does that mean I can post this link?
Yeah.
It says we're live, but there we go.
It takes a minute.
Got it. Figured that out. Let me think. Let me go here. Yeah, I need Eric back. This is way too much work. I'll post that there. He never tweets it out, does he?
No, he just throws it on the Slack.
Yeah, well, it's going out tonight. Because this is going to be an amazing episode. Or not. Tom, you got way too much excitement going on right now.
I'm hyped. I'm looking at an engraving by Félicien Ropi.
LMNOP?
Yes, describing the number of our episode tonight.
I don't want to add it. Can you just post it? Oh, that's a horrible picture, but hilarious.
What? Oh, the Wikipedia?
No, the snapshot that it took of me and so far for the episode. I'm like, whatever. I don't care. This is going out on the Diego Dev. No, it's PHP Ugly. Where are you at? Let's put it on SDPHP as well. And the Diego Dev Twitter. Why not? Sure now. Eric's going to see that and say, "What are you doing? Why'd you do that?"
He has no choice in the matter. He isn't here.
That is true. And we have one viewer, and it's not me, I don't think. I don't know.
It's probably Frank. Or
Kaylin.
No. Yeah.
If it's one of you two, please raise your hand. Or not. Maybe it is me. I don't know. All right, Ray, get started.
Yeah. Do you have a good intro story for the number 69?
Of course I do. I'm all prepared. And you're actually not going to hear it. I don't think you're going to hear it anyway. So there'll be a soundbite that you'll hear it afterwards.
Do you know what a lucky number is?
7. 42.
In number theory, a lucky number is a natural number in a set which is generated by a certain sieve. The sieve is similar to the sieve of Eratosthenes. I don't know. 69's a lucky number.
Oh. Let's do it
Welcome to episode 69. You're playing a sound I can't hear?
Not yet. I'm about to, and then I'll talk. Ready? 3. Can you hear that?
No.
Oh, okay. Then
I was waiting for you to talk.
I probably shouldn't have interrupted it then. All right, try it one more time, and then I'll talk. Right. You were looking like you were listening to us, so I was confused. That's right, 1969. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Episode 69, coincidence? I think not. You're listening to PHP Ugly. I'm John Congdon.
I'm Tom Rideout.
Hey, Eric. Eric's not here.
Yeah, sitting in for Eric is this wrench.
I thought it was supposed to be a crowbarring these things into the intro.
I couldn't find the crowbar, but I think a wrench will do for his replacement for now. How you doing?
Good. I did my best Eric impression trying to come up with some sort of intro.
I haven't heard it yet, but I'm sure it's perfect.
It's just that quote. And then I played the sound effect and then still said it anyway.
Excellent.
So a little redundancy in there. We're good to go.
Yeah, so we don't have Eric to provide filler for us today. So this is going to be our 10-minute episode.
If that. Not only filler, but we don't have him to steer the ship. And he's so good at that piece.
He is.
He's undervalued.
Although I will cut you saying that from the edit in the
podcast. It'll live on forever on YouTube. That is for sure.
Where 3 people have seen it. So what have you been up to this week? I got some cryptic message from you on Twitter about some great wave that's coming, that's going to be amazing and awesome, and everyone's going to be impressed and happy.
And we're still not going to talk about it yet.
So, and I was really excited for tonight too, because I wanted to hear about this. But then when Eric let us know that he wouldn't be able to make it tonight, I realized that today wasn't Wednesday, and that it was actually Thursday, and tonight was recording night.
Mm-hmm.
Because my kids are back, and time has lost meaning. Yeah.
And you were able to get on before 10 o'clock?
Yeah. We
I'm impressed.
Well, it's 11 here.
Oh, that's true. But you're still normally not available till 10 our time, I thought.
No, I just usually wait until you guys have your ducks in order.
Oh, that's true. My kid is all about trying to keep us in his room now. Constantly. Tonight it was, I go to walk out. I got to go potty. Okay, let's go. Get him back in his bed. About to walk out. I got to go potty. And we're potty training, but we're not because he's doing it so well. And then I go out to leave a third time and he tried again. I'm like, no, I'm out. Peace.
Just wait till he leaves a present for you in his bed.
Yeah, whatever.
I told you I had to go potty. Now you got to clean this up.
Your fault, not mine.
Yeah.
So, what were we talking about? So, you were asking about the week. Last night
I was asking about what this big fancy project is that you won't tell me about.
Not yet. The wave, it's building. The wave is building. When it comes crashing in, then you're gonna be like, oh, it makes so much sense.
What? Because you keep saying wave.
Google Wave is coming back. Aren't you excited?
No, I don't want Google Wave back. I want in on the top secret information.
Maybe you want in on top secret information that's live on YouTube right now.
Yeah.
That's not how this works.
Donald Trump Jr. does it. Why won't you?
Fair point.
This is the president's son. You don't get smart.
Let me have a little bit more wine. Maybe I'll spill the beans.
Loosen you up.
And as soon as I do, Eric would shoot me dead.
So
soon. It's coming. We'll reveal soon.
I heard you had a raucous meetup last night.
A raucous meetup, huh?
A raucous.
Is that how you would describe it?
Well, no, that's sort of what I heard. That's how it was described.
It was described that way.
There was a lot of excellent discussion and some minor altercations.
Yeah, it's one of those things. So I gave the presentation last night, and the title of the presentation was Advice for PHP Developers. And this came about from because we do once a week, we do a co-working session. So there's lots of people in San Diego that work from home. And Eric and I often get together just to co-work, and we decided to open it up to the group. And we often get people into that co-working session just talking, and then I get to look at their code and know that they're a brand new developer.
Yeah, it's
Fresh
not
out of
hard to tell.
Yeah, they're fresh out of school. Some just finished the coding boot camp. So you start to see these patterns, and then you start asking questions, and you get the deer in the headlights look of, I don't know what you're talking about, or I haven't heard of that. So I'm like, why not do a presentation? Get some newer developers out there. I put in the meetup description that I wanted some senior level people out there to kind of facilitate conversation. My job was bring up bullet points and start a conversation. So I thought the meetup went really well. It went better than I expected, actually.
So where did it all go wrong?
Wrong. See, you never want to call us to bring things up like that, but there was a section of my talk where I referenced probably one of my favorite presentations by Raphael Domes called "Your Code Sucks, Let's Fix It."
I love that one.
And I watch it at least once a year, if not a couple times a year. I promote it to developers I work with often. And there were a couple key points. So in my slides, I said you should be aware of clean code. I then referenced this presentation, said you should go watch this presentation, and then I put in 2 simple bullet points of examples of things he talks about in there. One of them is do not use else.
Right. Something that we've talked about in the past.
Yeah. And I'm a huge fan of that.
Yeah, because it reduces nesting, it improves readability, and it exits methods faster when you throw exceptions instead of catch in the beginning.
Or it eliminates some potential issues that you may have. So usually the else block is initialization. If something, I've seen it a lot where if this set a variable, else set a variable, or even worse, if this set a variable, else if something else, set that variable to something different. And then your final else block would be basically your initialization piece. And my whole thing, and I agree with Raphael on this, you move that to the top. That way, if you add an else if into that block, you don't accidentally forget to initialize something.
Right.
So I brought up that point. I brought up the point of limiting your code complexity and code depth, not having nested if blocks, not having just nested blocks in general. A loop with a if block inside of it and another loop inside of that. And then one of our members decided to say he disagreed with it all.
Which you're allowed to.
And he was defending having functions 500, 1,000 lines long because it makes it easier to read. I disagreed with him. We had a back and forth, and ultimately, because it was going on too long, I got to a point where I'm like, how about you give me one of your 500 to 1,000 line functions, I refactor it, and then we have this discussion. And then you can either prove me wrong or I can prove you wrong, one of the two. I was just trying to move on. It was like, this was going on too long.
Yeah, and that happens at the meetups is you want to engage, but you don't want to over-engage and then lose everybody else in the audience.
Yeah, and this guy, I mean, he's super nice, and I can understand to a point. If you keep refactoring, you can end up 5, 10, 15 functions deeper than what you would do with having this huge function. But the whole point of it is you understand what those subfunctions do. If your function names are clear, yes, you could end up that deep, but it's doing one thing.
Yeah, it's solid development.
Right. And he just wasn't getting it. And I didn't feel like trying to I didn't that wasn't what my talk was about, so I didn't have slides or examples or anything to back up my point. It was the whole point of it was go watch this talk. It's an hour long. And we ended up spending like 10 or 15 minutes on it. I was like, if you want me to do this presentation, I'll do it. But that's not what the point of this one was.
Flip the whiteboard around. All right, since you asked.
Yeah. But all in all, great conversation about everything. You would appreciate my third slide. I don't remember if it was my second or third slide. All it had on there was the Bitcoin logo and the Ethereum logo.
Nice.
That was it. So nobody knew what that meant. So I showed Eric my slides beforehand, and
That's not
he
going
was
to
looking
help.
at it. No, it was more funny that we were sitting there at the restaurant before we do the pregame thing.
Right.
And I told somebody else that my slide was Bitcoin and Ethereum. And Eric looks over and goes, "No, I'm looking at his slides right now. He's telling the truth." So my whole point in that slide was to get engagement. So I was able to ask everybody there, who here does not own any Bitcoin or Ethereum? And, probably 90% of the room raised their hand. And so I was able to ask why. Why don't you? And one of the reasons struck me kind of funny was he doesn't trust it. And I'm like, well, that's the whole point of it. It's supposed to be around trust.
Yeah, it's a trust-based network. It's worth as much as you trust it.
Exactly. So the whole point of me asking this was to say knowledge is power. Understanding pieces, understanding what's out there is important. So when
Yeah, and I think it's going to stay that way. I don't think people will end up owning Ethereum or Bitcoin in large, in the same way that everyone in a room who had an open line of accessible credit tied to their income being automatically deposited in their bank. It's, do you have a credit card or do you have a debit card? Those things aren't tied to a coin. You don't own part of Visa. But I think that kind of system is going to be what does take off popularly.
I think as more people and companies get comfortable with Bitcoin, you'll own larger amounts of that.
Yeah, but people like to think that a dollar is a dollar is a dollar. The price doesn't change, even though we see basic inflation on things like candy bars, and then we see daily inflation and deflation on things like gasoline. People still think of a dollar as a dollar.
Yeah.
And with Bitcoin, people are still in that mindset of how many dollars is this Bitcoin worth? How much can I cash out for? And it's a currency. You don't cash out on a currency. It's you use it. So
right.
That's I think the big hurdle with the crypto stuff.
And to me that'd be like we're so close to Mexico, going down to Mexico every day and then worrying about the exchange rate.
Right.
Right. If you have pesos, you're not going to be worried about, did this cost me $5 if you had a stash of them. But it's going to be a long time before we get to that point with Bitcoin.
I don't know how long. I mean, Ethereum is moving fast.
But to me, Ethereum isn't a currency, right? Bitcoin is.
It is.
Their whole model is to be a currency. Ethereum has so much more on top of that.
Bitcoin is a commodity, whereas Ethereum is a currency. And then there's exchanges on top of the currency. So you have you have these tokens like the Geo. Let's say you have 20 Geo tokens. You equate them to Ethereum. How many Ethereum is that worth? And then if you want to know how much your Ethereum is worth, you measure it in the gold standard, which is Bitcoin. So it's like trading your high risk portfolio for gold if you go from a token to Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And Bitcoin isn't the most stable, but it's more stable than the rest of the cryptocurrencies, and it has the biggest name recognition.
Yeah, and I think it'll get more stable over time. But anyway, so my whole point in this slide was trying to convince people that you need to know about things that are out there. And in this particular instance, I first learned about Bitcoin years ago, and at that point it was $9 a coin, and I was doing that same thing, trying to figure out how does this equate to a dollar's a dollar, right?
Yeah.
And at this point, had I looked into it then and invested, things would be a lot different today.
Yeah, certainly wouldn't be on this podcast.
So I still think it's going to go somewhere, just a matter of where. So
yeah, and Ethereum is funny that way because it's got a lot of missing components. I've been learning Solidity, and there's technology being developed that is going to make it more and more viable, but it's clearly missing some stuff. My first issue was interacting with contracts. So like these examples that they give, here's how you write a contract, and here's 4 methods for your contract. And I read it and I'm like, great, what calls any of these methods? Like, oh, you have to load up Geth in the command line, and you have to execute the contract methods by hand, calling the JSON 3 API or the JavaScript 3 API calls for it. And it's sort of, you just sort of look at it and go, so it doesn't have a way of whipping up a GUI like Visual Studio does, or there's no way of passing that along with the contract, some layout stuff. No, we got to keep it small. So I think something that hosts contract layouts is going to be a cool big thing, but I haven't seen anybody really doing that yet.
So that's been my question since I started looking into it, is that interaction, and it isn't clear for sure.
Right. So what I've seen done a lot is people hosting websites that behind the scenes make contract calls. So the Ethereum farming game is hosted on somebody's website, and it just makes references to the contracts, and that thing can be hosted anywhere, and it's just doing all the heavy lifting behind the scenes for you. But in practice, it's pretty simple. There's a delineating line between accessing the blockchain and doing a transaction, and then the game part, which is way over to the left and completely separate, and it's just API calls that are different. In the end, it's just an API call from a video game to a real transaction. So there's ideas of how to interact out there, but there's nothing design-wise out there. There's no one saying, hey, here's a fancy-looking contract if you lay it out this way, and it'll pull up in your MetaMask wallet or your Mist wallet and automatically display the contract in a fancy way.
Interesting.
But it'll get there.
We don't want to make this we don't want to make this a blockchain conversation again. We've been doing that the past couple of weeks. Yeah, want to, but that's probably not. So I had an interesting thing to bring up. I know a person that they hire remote workers, remote 1099 contract, full time. And
I already like this person a lot.
Yeah, like him a lot too. But something struck me funny, and I wanted your take on it. Their whole point when they bring somebody on, they base their pay based on where they live. So if they bring somebody from New York or San Francisco on, they're going to pay them top dollar. And if they bring someone from Utah, they're probably going to pay them a hell of a lot less for doing the exact same job.
Sure. This isn't uncommon.
Mm-hmm.
And when I moved out here to Colorado, this was asked of me by a colleague. I was explaining somebody my plans to move from San Diego to Colorado, and they said, "Well, you going to take a pay cut?" I said, "No, why would I take a pay cut?"
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, I was already making the amount of money that is theoretically based off of my value as an
Mm-hmm.
employee. And to lower it because I'm moving, but nothing else is changing because I'm working the same hours, I'm available the same hours, uh,
You're doing the
I'm
same work. You're
doing
still
the same
coding.
job. Yeah, and they wouldn't know that I
You,
had moved unless I mentioned it to them.
right.
So for me, why would I take a pay cut? I'm moving to improve my quality of life. I'm moving to save up money. That wouldn't make any sense. But I could easily see it as a negotiating tool for an employer. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
hiring somebody new to say, listen, you're in the Ohio market, it's not as good as it is here in New York. So don't expect New York pay for Ohio location. And if the person is a good worker, they will say, you're going to pay me the amount that I'm worth, not the amount that is dictated by my location. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the conversation that the two have. I you know, I don't like the role of management or employer or boss in any way. I'm a coder. I don't want to do negotiations. But I can definitely empathize with people who are in the position of spending their money to hire people wanting to have every advantage in the negotiating table.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely get it. I mean, we bring on contractors and have that same struggle. It's as an employer or people, the person bringing on contractors, you want to pay as little as you can for the best you can get.
Right, which
But at the
is
same time, the whole idea of location just kills me because I haven't taken that into consideration with people I've brought on.
and I think that's just a personality type. I think
Hmm.
there are people who are aggressive businessmen who see every interaction because you're CEO, but you're a coder. You're doing coding every
Hmm.
day, and coding is the fun part of the job. I think there are people who just do management, and for them, the negotiation is a fun part of the job. The
That's a good
the
point.
saving a dollar every way they can is the fun part of their job. So it wouldn't occur to you the same way that it would occur to somebody who does this as their sole interest
Hmm.
because they want to find the way to save every buck because that goes into their buy a yacht fund,
Hmm.
and
Very
you're not you're
interesting
not working
take.
on buying a yacht right now.
Yeah, that was my big thing with what you brought up with moving. It's does anybody ever actually expect somebody to take a pay cut because they move?
I think if I was an in-office employee, so if I was working in the office every single day and I said I need to move to Colorado and be remote now, then that would open up a dialogue about pay differences. But if I'm already remote, I it wouldn't I don't think it would get brought up because I'm already remote. It would shoot down any question that they have immediately.
So I can't even
What's the
see
difference?
that. I can't even see that being anything to bring up, even if you were in house and then moving to work remote.
Well, I see a lot of
To me, I'm still.
value working in house. I think in certain positions, working in house is very good. If you do stand ups every day, working in house is helpful. If I'm in a position of managing people, working in house is very important. If there's a lot of communication that doesn't interfere with coding time, then in house is helpful. But I've positioned myself very specifically not to be involved in meetings and interoffice communication. I don't. I want to get cool stuff done. That's all I want to do. But I mean, we
Right.
know, a friend of ours, Robert, was adamant about people being in house.
Mhm.
That the team functions best when people are working in house, and that a remote worker was a serious negative for him. And that group was a very, very big Scrum group. They had Scrum masters and that type of thing.
Mhm.
And I think if you're running a team like that, in house is much more valuable.
Yeah, I definitely can see that. Uh, a lot of the places we host our meetups, they've always been in-house companies, obviously because they have a location for us to be hosted. But man, I still can't get over this whole idea of me moving and then taking a pay cut just because I moved.
Well, you know
You've
your
already,
value.
as a company, yeah, but as a company, you've already budgeted. You're spending that money. So just because I move, you get to save money? No.
Yeah. Now, I haven't gone in for an annual review since I moved. So
Hmm.
it could be that they bring that up. Um, but again, if you know your value, those kinds of questions are easily squashed.
Yeah.
If you're not sure about your value, then you could be taken advantage of. Sure.
Yeah.
But
And I think as a contractor, you quickly learn where you're at. You know what the market rate is, not only in your area, but what the going rate for developers around the country is. And you start to learn what you need to take into consideration when applying for a job as
I
a
think one of the
contractor versus an employee.
I think one of the first questions anyone who's worked for a contracting agency has is, how much are they billing me out at?
Hmm.
And that's part of what helps you establish that value, is that other people have done the work for you and they're giving you your share of their work. You know,
And that's a hard part because I'm in that position that I'm basically billing out for work. And the nice part about most of the contractors that we bring on is we're giving you steady work. We're doing the legwork to find the contracts and close the deal.
right? And that
So,
your pay is included in that hourly rate that you're setting for me
mhm,
working.
right.
And so, I
And
think some people will appreciate and understand that, and some people won't. I
yeah.
knew people when I was doing contract work that would get upset that their contract agency was charging double what they were making. Like, yeah, they're doing half the work.
Well, I wish I could charge double for what I was paying out.
Well,
That'd be
this was a
nice.
military contract, so
Yeah.
double might actually be low.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I was doing that for when I was just going out to do tech support and found out what they were billing me out as. I was like, what? But then there were at that point I wasn't a contractor, I was an employee, so there were plenty of hours where I wasn't billable, but I was still being paid.
Yeah,
So
lot of solitaire hours.
yeah. So interesting. So, some news that came up with user groups. There's a big thing coming up, I think September, and SDPHP is going to participate. It's this big PHP test fest, and the goal is to get the PHP user groups around the world to start helping contribute tests to the PHP source code.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this. It's such an easy entryway into open source code, and I've been this week I was neck deep in tests, in serious tests.
Mm-hmm.
Mockery, expects, once, encrypted type stuff. And it's something that is a skill that I know I'm lacking, and I haven't spent the time doing what I should, learning it. But boy, this event is going to be a while. It's going to go for a couple months.
Well, I mean, there's nothing stopping people from taking part now. It's more of just trying to get some sort of motion to it, getting a lot of people involved at a single time. So
yeah, so this is phptestfest.org.
Mm-hmm.
And there's rewards, there's a mentorship program, there are local events, and
there's so much work being done behind the scenes. Ben Ramsey's put out a bunch of information. Sammy K. Powers, awesome individual. He's doing some videos to help people understand what we're going to be doing. So I'm definitely excited about it. I just wish I knew more about the subject. As of right now, I'm still kind of gathering all that so that I can relay it to the group. So we'll get there. It'll be fun.
I was updating the IronQ thing that I support now for the Laravel Collective.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that is not easy getting tests to pass. And the worst part was I couldn't tell if I was making the test pass, like just forcing it to pass, or if I was actually fixing a problem with the test, because the code was working. It was just the tests that were failing.
I actually screwed up. Good.
Yeah, it's nerve-wracking. It's nerve-wracking working on something that people use.
Yeah, I can't imagine that. Let alone, so I wrote a test. I refactored some code and wrote a test, opened a PR for this project. And of course, everything worked for me. The reviewer goes and pulls in and says, the tests aren't passing. You know, I tried doing this with our develop branch or master branch at the time and was getting unexpected results. And I put the blame on the fact that I was using local development and they weren't. So they just had new data that I didn't have at the time. Turns out that I forced the test to pass based on the new code instead of writing the test on the old code and then making sure the new code worked. When I saw that, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did that. I was embarrassed.
And it's easy to do. This whole testing thing, man, it's my issue with it is that it feels like doing everything twice, which I'm okay with, but it's hard to convince people above you that, yeah, you're going to take half of your time writing tests for this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, it's done, right? Like, yeah, it's done, but it's not testing. Like, well, we need to get it out today, so push it out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if it's not testing, then the next time I change something, it will break something somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And usually it's just off by a pixel or whatever, but sometimes it's bad. I mean, we've had cases where like 1 in 10 customers got a 404 for a day. And you're like, that's super bad numbers. this
Yeah,
this
that's
needed a
horrible.
test.
Yeah, so one of our biggest clients, they are on board for testing, but they're not making it a requirement. And I think that needs to be done. I think you need to make it, if you're going to open a pull request, there should be tests that prove your pull requests work.
Yeah,
And
and in open source, the pull request, I mean, every project that I've tried to contribute to or contributed to, if the tests don't pass, the pull request is bounced back at you. It's just not
Mhm.
going to, they're not going to get it because there's people using this. If you screw it up, they're going to be mad.
Mhm.
And if you edit the tests, then that means that the person who's reviewing your pull request knows that something in the test had to change, or you just screwed it up so that it would pass. So they review it tighter because you edited the test. But if you don't edit the tests and all the tests pass, then yeah, merge it in. That's fine.
No, but if you're adding new code, you need to have tests for that code.
For that
And
code. But if you're
yeah,
but if you're modifying old tests,
right.
if you
Yeah,
don't modify an old test, then you know at least that the new code is compatible with the old code.
right. No, I agree with that. But I think, like a lot of the open source projects, you can't submit a pull request without a test, or you can't add any functionality without a test.
Yeah, no, you have
And
to add a test if you add functionality.
yeah, and I think this client who's open to tests, like they want tests, but they don't make it a requirement to do so. And I think they should, because that just leads to only one or two of us that actually write tests. And
Yeah, and
I only do it for a small percentage of my code.
it makes sense when someone says, "Hey, this car is half the price of every other car on the market, but we didn't do any crash testing with it." You just, "Oh, I'm not gonna get in a crash. I'll be fine. And if I do get in a
Yeah.
crash, it's probably just as good." I mean, that's an
There's that
easy
fear.
mentality to have.
Yeah. Oh, fun. By the way, somehow we were up to 3 viewers right now. I'm impressed.
Wow. I bet one of them's Eric. I bet he couldn't help himself.
Possibly.
I'm super busy, can't make it to the podcast, but I'll watch it live.
Alrighty. So, what else is going on?
I realized as I was going through our show cards, I don't have any doom and gloom.
Well, here, I'll help you. Try and
But
there's
that's gonna
there's dramatic piano music playing right now. You should ease into this.
it's gonna crush Eric that the episode that he's not on also doesn't have doom and gloom because he hates the doom and gloom.
And we had an intro as good as his. That's gonna kill him too.
Yeah, he's gonna be just upset in general. So I ran across a very interesting pull request to Packagist. And it looks like somebody has created a group called the Paragon Initiative. They've got a couple projects. They're doing some stuff, providing services, but they've developed a sort of blockchain-ish thing called Chronicle.
So just to be clear, I don't think this is a pull request as much as it is an outline of what they would like to see happen.
I'm sorry, not a pull request. It was an issue.
Yeah.
So Chronicle is described as a self-hostable microservice built with the Slim framework, which enables authorized users to commit arbitrary data to an immutable, append-only public ledger. So a one-man blockchain, basically.
Interesting.
And this issue on Packagist was basically saying, hey, people updating things on their Composer files don't necessarily know that they're getting secure or correct updates from the right people with the right checks and balances. I would like to help with that system by integrating my project into Packagist so that package makers can sign all of their releases, and that it's part of Packagist and Composer can read it and verify it. I thought
I'm actually surprised. Yeah, I'm surprised that's not there already.
That's a smart idea, and it doesn't surprise me because we had talked about a few months ago WordPress just starting to implement this with their auto update system. Was their auto update system got compromised in a theoretical attack, and they updated to a secure update, signed update packages, so that the attack couldn't actually be executed anymore. And this is a very similar thing. But what did interest me is it appears to be one guy's project that he's sort of throwing out there in as many ways as possible. So like I found the story on Reddit, which linked to he posted it on Reddit, and it was a link to the issue on the Packagist repository, and just sort of saying, this is my project, please integrate it. And I was wondering, like, could a single person really go from like 0 to deployed on something like this? Like, I wonder how many other projects he's issued reports for and said, hey, I've got this cool thing, you guys should check it out and put it into place.
Did you take the time to look at that?
No, I didn't. Asking me obvious questions.
You're the one that brought it up. I didn't even think that way. You brought it up.
Well, it's, and I'm not saying it negatively. I'm not saying this person is trying to pump their own thing. I'm just wondering how much self-promotion is okay.
Mm-hmm. This actually reminds me of another issue from last night, but probably best kept for off the air.
Off the air. That's our listeners' favorite segment, is when we talk off the air.
Yeah, there's certain things that just shouldn't be said in a public forum.
Oh man, there's been like a bit of a shitstorm within the PHP community lately. Just everyone arguing about code style, best practices. And a couple weeks ago there was a big thing that was started with this article about minimalistic programming, not using strict typing, not using hints, tons and tons of stuff that was sort of anti what the community is trying to push right now.
Yeah, we talked about it a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and what's funny to me is that this week I've been getting posts on Medium from lots of different commentators in the community that are titled, coding best practices, coding standards for PHP. It's like everyone sort of took a deep breath and then just started writing for a week. And then it's all trickling out now. And so, we've got posts from Taylor and Jeffrey and all sorts of. I saw. Wow, I can't. It's a tab I deleted apparently, but just sort of the best practices stuff is blowing out of the woodworks right now, and I think that's okay. I think lots of articles on the same thing with different opinions is good
Mm-hmm.
because it calls into question what all of the best standards are and why they're called best standards and how that's a loaded term and write it the way you want to write it or you can't write it the way you want to write it because you're a goddamn employee and that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And it's like that. I like that discussion is happening in the PHP world and not in the comment section of a blog post, because that's where it got nasty.
Mm-hmm.
The comments are
Well, there's always nasty
cancerous.
there.
Yeah, it's dark territory.
So I read an interesting article that, or somebody put out there on Twitter. I can't remember which now, but best practices aren't necessarily best practices. It's more of this is what it's basically a consensus. Is what most people or a lot of people, influential people, are doing at the moment.
Right.
So.
I can't wait until the Twitterverse starts talking about code smells again, because that's the most arbitrary form of opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the definition of a code smell is it just doesn't feel right. It's starting to look like it might be a problem in the future. Like, shut up. I know there are some code smells that are clearly a problem. Nested 100 times is a problem, but there are some code smells where it's like, yeah, you're calling a repository here, but then you're not using it as a repository as much as you could, or you're not calling a repository here when this should also be a repository. Like, shut up. Like, yeah, sometimes I have a deadline.
Yeah. There was a video I watched recently, and I think it might have been the GoTo series on YouTube, GoToCon. And there was a woman talking about teaching kids to code and brought up this simple programming language that's available, and I forget the name of it now.
Scratch.
But it made me, yeah, I think that was it. And I was interested, so I went and started reading about it, but they recommend it for kids 8 and over. So not something I can get Grayson into quite yet. And she was saying that kids can actually but start to recognize code smells, even though they're not being taught what code smells are. But if you are teaching them good coding practices up front, and then they start to look at other code, they start to say, this isn't right, or something's not right here, and kind of identifying things. And I thought that was pretty interesting.
Well, I think we do teach kids coding. We just don't accept that basic language skills are coding. I mean,
Yeah.
if I were to say I'm teaching my kids grammar, syntax, and composition, you might think I'm teaching them basic English skills, or you might think I'm teaching them Perl. You know, and if you were to take the simplest form of a coding example, it would probably look something like a Dr. Seuss book. You know, just sort of this procedural making sentences that work but are kind of nonsense, but all work together and have a context of their own and produce an output, you know, produce a story, a last page. So, yeah, I'm all for teaching kids to program if they care about programming. But if they don't care about programming, leave them alone. Find the thing they do care about instead, you know? My
Exactly.
oldest son is interested in Magic, the card game. And it's quickly apparent that his interest is that he enjoys the game because he is a winner. And he defines himself as a person who wins. And he also enjoys the game because he knows the value, the daily value of every card in his collection. And he is an expert trader. So from like $100 worth of cards, he's got almost $1,000 worth of value now because he's traded around with everyone he knows, and teaching him the morals of fairness and all that stuff as part of the trading system. And I know that at some point I'm going to say, hey, you want to make some real money trading? Here's this super cool tool that I have no idea how it works or understand at all that
It comes
shows.
back to blockchain. Everything comes back to blockchain, doesn't it?
I was going to say the stock market, but you're right. The blockchain would be really good. No, it's, the people who make money are the people who absolutely love doing investing, day trading. You know, if you're into day trading because you want to make money, you're doing it wrong. If you're into day trading and because you want to make money and you love day trading, then you're going to make a ton of money.
I'll tell you, kid, I got a bunch of Magic cards from the 90s.
Ooh. Hold on to those.
I got into it well, they're probably worth nothing now because everything keeps getting.
Oh no!
Like, all the cards keep getting better, and
not at all.
I don't have any of the high dollar value ones anymore. I sold all those. But me and my buddies back in high school would buy the huge boxes of them, and it was just nuts.
Yeah, he hosts events with his friends where they all get together and buy a box and then win the cards off of each other. And
that's what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be at the beginning of a game, at a random draw, you played for that card.
Yeah, that got
bad. Away from that.
There were problems with that.
Yeah.
It promoted cheating.
I'm not sure how that is, but my buddies and I'd spend hours playing the game and just winning cards off each other all the time.
So you wanna hear this? We said earlier that one of our listeners was probably Eric.
Mm-hmm.
And he replied in
the Slack channel.
He replied in the Slack channel that it wasn't him. My first thought, of course, was, God, I wonder who it is then. Like, wait a second. If it wasn't him, how did he know that we were saying that? Oh, I'm stupid. I got it.
Yeah, we lost a viewer. We're down to 2, so it must mean it's time to wrap things up.
Yeah, we've gotten boring. Without Eric to carry the show, we've only gone for an hour.
Yeah, that doesn't include the time setting up at the beginning.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, I feel bad. No doom and gloom.
You'll just have to try harder next week. Besides, you only do it for Eric, right?
I really do. It tortures him so delightfully.
Well, I think this was a decent episode. Not our best, but we got through it. Eric, we miss you.
John doesn't know which buttons to press, so
I'm not sure how to stop this thing. I got so confused at the beginning. So much work to be done.
I was really anticipating his intro for episode 69, though.
I know, we've been talking about it for a couple weeks. And then I go and screw it up.
Yep.
Anyway.
Alrighty,
this has been a fantastic episode.
This has been episode
from okay to fantastic. I'm John Congdon.
I'm Tom Rideout.
Keep it ugly.
Keep it ugly. I almost pulled the amateur mistake that I I did like on episode